Mark Coppola is a candidate for Senate in Western New York. He joins us tonight from Buffalo. Thanks for your time, Mark.
Kaylin, thank you.
Just wanted to speak with you about how you came about supporting this position.
Well, I had been previously elected to office, so I know the political wrangling that goes on with some of the minor parties, and quite frankly, it's discouraging to know that much of it has nothing to do about your record or the positions you take, as it does about what you can do for them, whether it's patronage or actually donating largely to their parties. So I decided early on in this race that I wouldn't seek out or accept any minor party endorsements, because with all of the things that we've seen over the past couple of months and quite frankly a couple of years, whether it be influence in government, whether it be patronage, or whether it be corruption through donations, I think that it's time that New York State follows the rest of the states in the country, quite frankly, and ends fusion voting to mitigate this type of political corruption.
But Mark, you have accepted minor party lines in the past, correct?
Yes, I have.
And why did you choose then to accept them and now not?
Well, it's somewhat different at the local level. When I was a city councilman, generally within your council district, there's only a few people that make a decision, and some of those people, they take a recommendation of some of the people who live in that district. So it's a little bit more pure, if you might, a little bit more transparent. There's not as much wrangling going on because they know that the minor party endorsement doesn't mean as much. But once I engaged in it at the state level, I see, quite frankly, what happens. You can get the endorsement, as we've seen here, from the local party, people who've dealt with you, worked with you, know how you act on certain issues, and then have it taken away at the state level from people that don't even know you. And quite frankly, it comes down to political gain and money, and who's willing to donate or promise the most to the candidate who wins. So I chose in this election to no longer engage in that process, and I believe that it's a way that we're going to reform New York State government. Reforming our state government isn't going to be just about decreasing spending and increasing revenues. It's going to be about reforming our political system and making sure that it's more transparent, less corrupt, and more competitive for the voters.
What do you think it means for a candidate to have their name on one of those minor party lines?
Well, you know, quite frankly, the three candidates that had the local endorsement that you reported earlier today and yesterday, that also I guess was overturned at the state level. For them, it might not be as much because they're in primary elections. In my case, it might mean an awful lot, being that in November, whoever has the most lines, when you pool together all those votes, that person might wind up edging out the other person, whether or not they be a Democrat or Republican. So in effect, I'm not being hypocritical or saying that that I chose not to take it just because it was an easy way out for me. It will affect me in my election, but I believe that if people want reform, that they have to vote for someone who's willing to stand up and give specific ideas about how to reform the system, not just saying that they want reform. So I think that the effect of the endorsement is more important in November, but especially when it's head-to-head against a Democrat and Republican.
But in November, for those minor party lines, they have to get a significant amount of votes to keep the line. Do you think running those third-party, lesser-known candidates, I mean, that's not going to get them the votes that they need in most cases to maintain that line?
Oh, you're absolutely right. It won't if they're going to be on the statewide ballot. What I'm proposing is that we actually encourage more parties to be on our ballot and have them endorse registered members of their own parties to create a more competitive atmosphere and mitigate some of the corruption that we're seeing now. In my proposal, I wouldn't shy away from saying that those minor parties have to do significantly less to be able to stay on the ballot in November throughout our electoral cycle.
How would it benefit New York State to move to what most of the country does, where those lines aren't as recognized, or you can't run this fusion voting on those lines?
Oh, I think it'll be a tremendous benefit. Again, I think that what you're seeing in some of the minor parties, and I want to make this clear, I'm not against minor parties, third parties. I believe that they hold a significant amount of importance in our political system. Many of those reform parties have created or highlighted issues that have been important in our state and our national government. So I think that they should exist, and I appreciate all those who register in those parties. I'm specifically talking about the party bosses and the leaders who've made this nothing more than a corrupt system. I believe that in the end, New York State, and quite frankly, will benefit because it'll be a more competitive system. People will know where the candidates stand on issues. I mean, if you look at it, you have to wonder how somebody can have a Republican endorsement, a conservative endorsement, and an independent endorsement. How they can have the Working Families Party endorsement, the conservative endorsement, and the Democratic endorsement. These are parties that have philosophies far differing each other. How do the voters really know where a candidate stands on the issues?
Right, but you mentioned these platforms. What if someone wanted to vote for a major party candidate under, say, the Conservative Party line because they're saying these are the stances that this candidate believes in that I support? Would that not send a message to that candidate? Okay, I have 100,000 voters from the Working Families Party, or I have 50,000 voters from the Conservative Party. Maybe I should take more of a look at the stances that the candidate has that reflect those views.
It might, but as we know, in November, you can vote for any candidate that you want. It's not a primary. You're not stuck to voting on your own party line. And I think that that we have to come up with a way where voters have more choice and where the candidates themselves go after all the voters. In particular, in my case, I am not just focusing on Democrats. I will talk to Republicans, independents, conservatives, Working Families Party members, everybody, blanks, because I think that those are the voters, not just the people within my party. And I think that as elected leaders, it's our responsibility to pay attention to all of the issues, not just the ones that are conservative, not just the ones that are Democratic, more or liberal, if you will. I think that you have to pay attention to all of them, not just because they can attract some votes on that line.
But for your election, just the D line for you, huh?
Just the D line for me. You will not find a letter or a questionnaire for any of the minor parties, me seeking their support. Again, I appreciate all of the people who registered in those parties. I really do. And I think that they play a significant role in our political system, which is important. But it is the party leaders who have made this nothing but a cesspool for corruption. Those voters deserve to have people on those lines that deserve them, not just who their party leaders might have gotten the biggest bang for their buck or wound up getting the biggest promise if they get elected. And I think it really is a disservice to the people who registered in those parties for philosophical reasons. And again, I think that we're going to reform New York State government, not just by looking at finances, but looking at some of the special interests that are controlling the decision making in Albany all the time. And I think that this is the best way to do it. This is a good start.
Thank you so much for joining us from Buffalo this evening, Mark.